The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back, in case you're wondering, with George Case. I'm Ralph Tycho of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and we have a full house. Alan Blumpkin is here. Hello, Alan.
Hello, everybody.
All right.
Hello there, everybody.
Hubbler.
Hi, everybody.
And, of course, George Case, the third. How are you, George?
Hey, I'm just fine. Looking forward to this.
All right. We have a guest, and he's a returning guest. He pitched in the major leagues and did quite well in 1965, as an example, for the Minnesota Twins. His name is Jim Grant. Jim Mudcat Grant, known to some as that. How are you, Jim?
Fine. I'm doing pretty good for old Shepard.
Oh, okay. Well, just being above ground for all of us is a privilege and a thrill at this point in our lives. But we get to look back and reflect on what happened. I'd like George to talk to you a little bit because you guys have some connects. George's dad was a coach for the Minnesota Twins back in the day, and of course was a terrific ball player, the fastest player in the game in the 30s and 40s. George Case talked to Jim Grant.
Well, yeah, I'm very happy to talk to Jim because, I certainly followed his career and knew of Jim as a major league pitcher, and we did have a few people in common that we knew. Jim was with the Twins up into the year before my dad joined the Twins as Cal Irmer's third base coach, but Cal was the manager when Jim was there in '67, and Early Wynn was the pitching coach. So I think that and Early Wynn and my dad were teammates. So I think Jim, certainly knows those gentlemen. And also, I wanted to compliment Jim. I saw a YouTube just the other day when you did a singing tribute to Harmon Killebrew. I thought it was beautiful. You sang the Louis Armstrong "What a Wonderful World," and
right.
And it was it was well done, and I know the Killebrew family really appreciate it. I just wanted to compliment you, Jim. That was a wonderful job. You did a very, very nice thing for Harmon. I think that was quite a few years ago, but you had a wonderful voice, and your tribute to Harmon was very well received by everybody.
Yes, it was, and I have a film when I did that to Harmon Killebrew, and we lost him real early in life, and so did we lost Bob Allison, every time I go somewhere and somebody asks me to sing that Harmon Killebrew tribute because people still remember Harmon. What a nice man he was.
Mm-hmm. Well, Harmon, as you know, was a terrific ball player and just a wonderful human being. And I go back to Harmon. I always tell this story. We had a planned symposium in Washington, D.C., the legacy of Griffith Stadium, and Harmon had accepted my invitation, and then 9/11 happened, and Harmon could not get in, but he personally called me to tell me how sorry he was that he couldn't be there, and when I first had called him and I mentioned my name, he said, "Are you George's boy?" And I said, "Yeah, I am, Harmon," and so we had a very nice, conversation about that, and many of your teammates that you played with and knew very well, were also with the Twins when my dad was coaching. So it was Harmon and Allison and Tony Oliva and Rod Carew and Tovar. I mean, a lot of those guys were there when you were there. And, it was always a pleasure for me to talk to Minnesota because Minnesota and Washington had that strong connection. When my dad played, it was Washington, and then the team was relocated to Minnesota when you were there. So, I always appreciated and followed Washington baseball, and I know that you had a great season in '65, and I'm not sure if you had arm troubles the next year, but then, 2 years later, I think you were traded to the Dodgers, And one of my good friends, a fraternity brother of mine, was one of your catchers, Jeff Torberg.
Yeah, Torberg. He was a good catcher too. Earl could hit a little bit better, but
right.
Jeff, he had a way of moving pretty good.
Jeff was a good defensive catcher, and he struggled at the plate because he was a right-handed hitter and only played against left-handed pitching, so he never was in the lineup that much. And he did in college. He was a terrific hitter, and yet when he came up with the Dodgers, he just didn't play that often, so it affected him. But he was a very good defensive catcher. He did catch, Koufax's perfect game and 2 other no-hitters. So, as you know, and you pitched to Jeff, I mean, Jeff was, had a good command of the plate, and he knew the signal, knew the calls, and knew the batters. And I'm sure that, you and Jeff had a lot of communication back and forth, during your years with the Dodgers.
Yeah. Yes. And it was, we used to talk, Jeff and I, quite a bit in terms of what we were going to do, like next week and the week after that, and a couple of days after that. We had some great conversations, Jeff Torberg and I.
Jim, let me ask you one thing. Was Early and my dad were very, very close friends, and then they were coaching together. But when you were pitching for the Twins, was Early your pitching coach at the time?
Yes, he was one of them a little bit later on. But
okay.
He Early Wynn and I were good buddies for 2 or 3 reasons. One was the fact that what a pitching coach he was, but on the other hand, he was around when Early Wynn was with the Cleveland Indians and a few other great pitchers over there.
Oh, right. Bob Lemon and
Bob Lemon and
they had that great
over there.
Right, they had that great staff with the Indians. They probably had one of the finest pitching staffs in the history of baseball. When they had Lemon and Feller and Wynn and Garcia.
Yeah,
and Narleski and Mossy formed a terrific bullpen for that.
Right.
Yeah, they were the ones that was first started that short relieving stuff. Because when they didn't have starting pitchers, they say, well, when we get to the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, these other guys, like Early Wynn and Ray Narleski.
Jim, would you have made a relief pitcher, a closer, had you come up at a different time and had baseball been a little different in the way pitchers were handled? Do you think, did you have the bounce back, the resiliency to pitch 2 or 3 days in a row, that sort of thing?
We all that was all part of the action. As time passed, you started. You wanted to get as close to the 9th inning as possible, because and we used to. Gary Bell was over there too, for the Cleveland Indians.
A little later on, yes.
Yeah, a little bit later on, but when we used to laugh all the time because we were starting pitchers at first, and then we started looking at the way that hoping that whoever started, they got as close as possible to the 9th inning. And we used to run to the bullpen because you wanted to save games, back in those days.
Right. So you were not only a starter, but you would relieve as well.
Yes, we got closer to the bullpen as time passed.
Jim, how good was Tony Oliva?
Tony Oliva was quite a hitter, and he was quite a hitter from the very start. And we used to laugh all the time because Tony used to tell us, Jimmy, we will get the game for you if you are ready. And we used to laugh all the time because Tony Oliva was quite a hitter. He was quite a hitter, and
can you tell me about the clubhouse dynamics between the Latins, the whites, and the blacks back in those days?
It you know what, at times there were circumstances where it was fun, and there was circumstances because back in those days it was a little more difficult in terms of blacks and whites back in those days.
I'll say
because even in the places where you went to play, including Washington, Baltimore, and other towns, so it was a little bit more difficult, and you knew that you were always going to run into circumstances because that's the way it was.
Jim, I had you on a few times, and I've never broached this subject, and I thought maybe it's time. You've been so open and forthcoming. There was an instance in your career early on when you had some problems with a bullpen coach, a pitching coach. There was an instance where you stood up for your human dignity. And I've always, since reading about that years ago, I've always admired you for that. Would you elaborate on that or put it in your words?
You mean the pitching coach that was there at that time?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as an old timer, you know, I can't quite remember the circumstances, but it had something to do with the national anthem, and the gentleman that was there at that time. I'm trying to remember the circumstance at that time, what really happened. But the national anthem had something to do with it because when they played the national anthem, I made some statements because and this land is not so free because I can't go to Mississippi, sit down at the county. As that was the statement that I made at that time, and he didn't. And I don't know if it was Early Win or whoever it was, but he didn't appreciate the fact because some kids was bombed in Birmingham, Alabama, I think it was.
Oh, yeah, the little schoolgirls.
Yeah.
In 1963, yeah.
Yeah. And when I made those statements early when I think it was, they didn't appreciate the fact that I made the statements. And when I made
Jim, it wasn't Early Win. I can't think of who the pitching coach. It was
right.
not Early Win.
You're right. It wasn't Early Win, and I can't think of the name of the pitching coach.
I'm away from the computer. I'd Google it, and we'll try to get that in the notes. It wasn't Early Win, but you did. That was
Ted Wilkes.
Yes. Great memory.
Yeah, that's who it was.
Okay. By the way, I think your lyrics were quite apropos to those times, and guess what? They're quite apropos to these times. The song is a war song, and I think that when people protest, they're not protesting the song per se. I'm referring to what's going on with the NFL and Colin Kaepernick and all that. They're protesting the ways that people are treated unfairly, and so I just wanted you to hear that in your words. And I know David Hubler, when we were talking about pitchers that pitched in relief at times back in those days, I bet Allie Reynolds crossed your mind, David Hubler.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask Jim a question about Early Win, because Jim, I did a book on wartime baseball, and one of the people I spoke to played with Washington in 1944. He was a rookie, and he was telling me that not only did starting pitchers pitch relief, they also pitched batting practice from time to time. And so this fellow, his name slips my mind at the moment, but he said to me, he said, I came up there and I was a real rookie, and we were doing batting practice, and I hit one right between Early Win's legs on out into center field. They didn't have that screen up there in those days. And he said, boy, was I mad. Was I scared? He said, because Early Win was really mad. And I was wondering, what was his disposition like as a teammate?
He, as a teammate, I tell you, he was a mean, we used to call him a mean fool. He was not, he didn't, in fact, even when he walked out to the mound, you could tell that, and anybody that was going to face him as a batter, you knew that you were going to face some rough, a rough pitcher, because that's the way it was. He was going to knock somebody down. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, if just to make sure that when Early himself, when he walked out on the mound, you knew that you were going to get a ball underneath his chin some kind of way. He didn't hit people, but when he went out there, you knew that a couple of balls is going to be thrown underneath the chin, his chin, stuff like that, just to wake you up, to let you know that I am Early Win, and you're going to get a ball underneath your chin.
They said that he would knock down his mother if she came up and could hit.
I remember that quote. Yes.
Yeah, only if she was digging in. Jim, I'd like to ask you, I know the first 2 years when you were with the Indians, in 1958 and 59, one of your teammates was Minnie Minoso.
Yes.
Can you talk about him a little bit, please?
Minnie Minoso was a great ball player. And of course he was with the
White Sox.
Yeah. And Minnie was quite a ball player. He could run, he could hit, and he knew how to play the game, and there was no ifs and buts with Minoso. he knew, like I said, he knew how to play the game, and he played the game to the hilt. And he played a long time also. And it was great to see him at the end of his career. It was great to see him because you knew what you were going to get. You know, when he came to the ballpark, you knew who you were going to get. And we appreciated him all the way to the end.
No, I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
I've
been saying this for a long time.
Yeah. I agree with you on that.
Thank you.
Jim, did you ever get to meet Satchel Paige?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, that,
okay, can you tell me about your interactions and what he meant to you? And
I have a wonderful photo of me, Satchel Paige, and Larry Doby. And I met Satchel Paige as a rookie at the Cleveland Indians dugout. And Larry Doby, my rookie year. And we sat in the dugout. And somebody, I don't know who it was, said, "Would you like to take this photo?" I said, "Yes, sir." And I ran over, and Larry Doby was there, and I have this wonderful photo of Larry Doby, myself, and Satchel Paige. Yeah, so I got a chance to talk to him at that time. And then I got a chance to talk to him some more when he came to the Twins. He came to the dugout in the Twins, and we got a chance to take another photo. And we got a chance to do some chatting in terms of pitching, in terms of pitching inside, because a lot of times when you wanted to let a pitcher know that you could pitch inside without hitting them, then that was a skill that you worked on. You know, letting pitchers, letting hitters know that you can pitch inside without throwing at their heads and stuff like that. But because some hitters, Satchel Paige taught me that you have to know that you can pitch inside to guys without hitting them in the head or something like that. That was a skill that Satchel Paige and I talked about from time to time. So,
did he use the expression "a lemon to the melon and a pea to the knee"?
Yeah.
I never heard that.
Yeah.
I think that was the Satchel expression from way back then. Jim, was there, when you spoke with him, was there anything you were surprised by with him? Was he different than the public perception of Satchel Paige?
No, not really. He pretty much talked about how it was that you had to learn to pitch inside without throw it at a guy's head, and if you could do that, they know the hitters knew that
you couldn't dig in.
Yeah, you that's a good one. Yeah, you couldn't dig in, that you could possibly be pitched inside without digging in and made you aware of the fact that, okay, all right, you got a couple of hits now. You gonna get pitched inside, and that's the way it was. So,
as Early Wynn's grandmother would attest, who never dug in, that woman all her life.
What was that? He knocked his own mama down?
Yeah,
His
mother, yeah.
Right.
After he knocked his son down in spring training.
Yeah, he did knock his son down, Joe Early, who I knew, and Joe Joe and I were the same age, and the story was that one time Joe Early was taking batting practice and hit a couple shots off his father, so his father put him on the ground, and he said, "Hey, I just, I wasn't going to hurt my son, but I wanted to let him know who was boss."
That's a beautiful story.
I wonder how, Jim, how do you like the way pitchers are being used now with 6 innings and 7 innings? I mean, in your day, of course, they didn't have pitch counts.
Well, they, I was a relief pitcher for a while,
I know, yeah.
Yeah, with the Oakland A's. And the pitch count, of course, is that what we're talking about now?
Yeah.
Yeah. That as a relief pitcher, you had to be ready to get ready to become a relief pitcher. And the pitch count was such that you had to be ready all the time. And I taught Rollie Fingers how to become a relief pitcher because he could throw hard. Rollie Fingers could, and he didn't quite get the relief aspect of it. And we used to sit, and we used to talk about short relieving. And when he went into the Hall of Fame, he made a statement that I want to thank Mudcat Grant for helping me get into the Hall of Fame because I taught him the relief aspect of it. And I was looking at television, and when he made that statement, boy, I tell you, I jumped up in there and clapped.
That too is a great story. Where did you live when you were pitching for Oakland? I live in Alameda, a stone throw away from the Coliseum.
Me too.
You lived in Alameda?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
They had some buildings there. I'm trying to think of where that was, but where the buildings were where some kids lived, and that's where me and Vital Blue and another pitcher. I can
Blue Moon Autumn.
Yeah, Blue Moon Autumn. We all lived in that vicinity over there, and I can't think of the name of the street.
Was it on Bay Farm Island that you lived out, or was it downtown in Alameda?
It was like it wasn't far from the stadium, to tell the truth.
Absolutely, it's just literally a freeway exit away, or you can even walk it.
It was right in that vicinity and stuff like that because they had a.
Now, let me ask you: did you enjoy your time in Northern California?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Jim, what do you do away from the ballpark, or what did you do you go from major city to major city. What was your routine when you arrived at a city?
Well, it depended. It depended on, what city that it was. If it was New York, you always went to Harlem.
Right.
Yeah, because the music at the Apollo Theater was real great. You always heard, and we were at the Apollo just about all every time we went there, because there were always great entertainment. James Brown and all of those guys. And
did you ever play there when you had Mudcat and the Kittens?
Not the Kittens. I didn't play there, but I did play it in a couple of the nightclubs, and I can't think of the name of it, but I did play there with the Kittens a couple of times. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very cool. What was your favorite city to visit as a player?
Well, to visit as a player, my favorite city, because of the circumstance, was Cleveland, because I had played with the Cleveland Indians, so whenever I went back to Cleveland, that was just one of my favorite cities to go.
Right.
And because you always saw old time playing and old time fans, there were fans of mine that I had met when they were children. And so whenever I went back to Cleveland, it was those kids. I saw them grow up, and and so forth. So I would say Cleveland, and then a little bit later on, Kansas City was a good city. Because of the old Negro League Museum, because of the fact that the barbecue was great.
Right.
If you went to Kansas City and you got some barbecue, you wanted to hurry up and get back to Kansas City. Because the barbecue was great. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. You're happy in Southern California. You settled there.
Yeah.
Any regrets about that?
Not really.
Okay. Do you miss any of the other cities? And I say, well, maybe if we lived here, we could have this, that, and the other thing. You're pretty content?
Well, we're real content, because I'm married to a lady from Europe.
She's Trudy, am I correct?
Huh?
Her name is Trudy.
Yeah, her name is Trudy.
She was so nice in connecting us today. Pass on my thanks to her, if you would.
I sure will.
All right. And, Jim, I'm going to ask you to do something that's kind of impromptu. Mm-hmm. Would you read us a poem or tell us a line of a poem or something that we can have on recording, a Jim Grant, paragraph of a poem or whatever.
That was the poem that life is like a game of baseball, and you play it every day. Let me see if I could remember
come up with something. Whatever it is you remember, any of the words. Did you write that, Life is Like a Game of Baseball you played every day?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes, I did. And
I'm speaking for all of us. We all have goosebumps with this interview, Jim.
And I wrote that when I was with the Cleveland Indians.
Was that in Sports Illustrated, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure that Sports Illustrated.
I do remember an article about your poetry back in the day in Sports Illustrated.
I always, Mrs. Vera Lucas Goodwin was my high school teacher, and there were several things that she did that I will never forget, because Mrs. Goodwin not only taught me music, but she also taught me poetry too, and she also taught me Johann Bach. Johann Strauss.
Like that.
This is good, and she taught me poetry, and I always, was knocking things down and so forth. When I say knock things down, I mean in terms of music and in terms of and poetry. And I thought about the time that I spent working on my poetry. Life is like a game of baseball, and you play it every day. It isn't just the game you play, but the kind of game you play. Stop and look the whole team over. You've got dedication there. You're bound to be a winner with man who really care. At first base, there's religion. Okay, now hold it just 1 minute. Okay, just 1 minute.
We're with Jim Mudcat Grant, former Major League player, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The show is In Case You're Wondering with George Case. Jim's getting his poetry together for us. Alan, anything else that you'd like to ask Jim when he gets?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to ask him is what was his reaction when he was traded from the Indians to the Twins?
Okay.
I can tell you that reaction because I was with the Cleveland Indians, and when I was traded, I was in the outfield with the Cleveland Indians, and they called me to the clubhouse, and when I was in the outfield, like I said, taking batting practice, and when they called me, they said they want you to go into the clubhouse, and when I said, what for? They said, there's something that has happened. And so when I went to the clubhouse, my bags were packed.
Oh, God.
Wow.
And when I went to the clubhouse, and my bags were packed, and there's somebody where they want to see you, and I said, what are these bags? They said, they're yours, and there's somebody want to see you over at the Twins, and it was Harmon Killebrew. And I went over to their clubhouse, and like I say, it was Harmon Killebrew. And Harmon Killebrew says, welcome to the Minnesota Twins. I says, I'm not a Minnesota Twin. They said, yeah, you are. And here's all your stuff right here. And I said, really? Because, you know, the fact that that
your employer didn't call you, that Cleveland didn't say, thanks for a great job, you know.
No, they said nothing like that. You know, but
when they called you into the clubhouse, did you think something bad happened to a relative or somebody you knew?
You know, I didn't quite get it at that time, because I didn't think that I would, you know, ever get traded or anything like that. You know, but when I got over there and Killebrew said, welcome to the Twins. And then I knew something, you know, that I had.
Yeah, you knew you were wanted.
Yeah.
I guess that helped a lot, yeah.
Yes.
I knew then that I had a smile on my face because you're talking about Harmon Killebrew and you're talking about Bob Allison, Tony Olivas, Olo Pasayes, Earl Batty, because there weren't any black there weren't any black catchers back in those days.
And very few black pitchers. You were one of the 5 aces, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And speaking of Alameda, there's one of the black aces grew up in Alameda, and his name totally skips my mind. But very few. Brooks Lawrence. Pardon me?
Did you say Vada Blue?
No, this is, I cannot think of his name, but it's not Vida Blue. He's Vida Blue may be one of the black aces that was.
Yeah, he's one of
a book about, but
Mike Norris.
No, Mike. I don't think Mike Norris won 20, but this is.
He did, yeah. He won 20.
Player of a more of this era, and his name absolutely. He went to the same boys' club as my kids. He's Carlos's friend, who's my like a nephew to me, and his name I'm blanking on right now, but. I will have it for next week's show. George, would you like to ask Mr. Grant anything as we conclude the episode?
Well, I'm just really happy to talk to Jim, and you know, he had a great career, and his recall of times was wonderful. And if you know, my dad being a player, I had a lot of those experiences that Jim was talking about, and when they were traded, my dad was traded from Washington to Cleveland, so you know, they had that connection, and then he was traded back from Cleveland to Washington. So I understand about the trades, and it's hard sometimes, but when you have somebody like a Harmon Killebrew welcome you to the clubhouse, that's a pretty nice saying hello to you. That's great.
Yeah,
Jim, I just thought of something that my boyhood hero, or one of them, Billy Martin, whose glove I had a Billy Martin glove as a kid. He was a coach on that 1965 team. And I want to know if you related with him. I know he was instrumental in getting the year out of Zorro Versailles.
Now, who was this now?
Billy Martin.
Oh, Billy Martin. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
do you remember him and any thoughts about him? Any memories?
Yeah, he was a great coach, and he was quite an individual. You know, got in a couple of fist fights.
A couple, more than that.
And my mother loved him. My mother and Billy were good buddies. They were, and whenever we went through, and there was a flight or something like that, and we had to stop and Mom, whenever she saw Billy, she would say, "Billy, are you all right?" Billy said, "Yes, ma'am." Say, "Are you being a good person?" Billy said, "Yes, ma'am." So Mom said, "Are you sure?" So she said, "Yeah." So
that's great. That's great.
So yeah, they were great pals. Mm-hmm.
All right. Hey, thank you, Jim. I hope you somewhere down the line will return again because you're an absolute delight.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay. On behalf of David Hubler.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You got it. All right.
Yeah. George, take us on out. Close out your show.
Well, again, it's a great pleasure to have Jim on with us, and hope we can have him again. And I really enjoyed it, Jim. And baseball is real special to me, as I know it is to you. And look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, everybody. Be well, thank you, and we'll be back next week, same time. Al, how does that go?
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Love hearing it, Al. Thank you for being here, all of you, and David, we'll see you in
about 35 minutes.
35
yep.
minutes.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Adios, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.